only Europeans have the right to exist. And this derives from their hateful, racist, discriminative mentality, which they have adopted from their Bible, by the way. If you read the Bible, you'll understand that this is not a book from God. It has enticed violence. It has enticed racism. It has encouraged these Zionist Europeans to continue to enslave other nations, to continue to belittle other nations of different races, different colors, different religions. Read the Bible, you'll understand this is the source of their evil.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to the channel. So, in this video of today, I want us to talk about European atrocities in history across the world. I often find it rather funny that Europe and the West are always trying to lecture everyone and everybody about democracy, about tolerance, while when we look at history, they're the most intolerant and they have nothing to tell everybody else about democracy. It's ironical that they preach water but they drink wine. Let me share this video with you here. Let's watch the video together, and at the end of the video we can do a deeper analysis, further analysis and of the video. So let's first dive into the video.
I hate to break it to you, but Europe is the source of every evil. If you're not convinced, I mean, let me read the numbers for you so you could gain a perspective. When European colonizers discovered America, how do you discover a continent that was home to 80 million native Indians? When European colonizers invaded, occupied, and attempted to colonize America, they killed 56 million native Indians. That is close to 90% of the original population of the people, the original people of America. 56 million. When Europeans colonized Australia, they annihilated 90% of the Aboriginal people living in Australia. In World War I, 40 million people were killed by Europeans. In World War II, 80 million people were killed by Europeans. During the slave trade, European traders, European colonizers enslaved 12 million Africans, 2.5 million of which were killed, died during the harsh and brutal voyage to the Americas. King Leopold of Belgium killed 10 million Africans in the Congo alone. 1.7 million people were killed during the European Crusades to invade Jerusalem, the holy city. 3.8 million people were killed during the Vietnam War by the Americans, which are originally Europeans. 250,000, that is 250,000 civilians were killed by Americans, which are originally Europeans, of course, when they dropped 2 bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. 3 million Algerians were killed by the French during the French occupation of Algeria. 3 million Muslim Algerians were killed in Algeria during the French occupation of Algeria. 750,000 Muslims were slaughtered and killed in cold blood in Libya by the Italians when they occupied Libya. 4.5 million Muslims were killed by the US during their unjustified war against different Muslim countries from the Middle Eastern region. You know, Europeans have killed more people than the flood of Noah. I mean, Europeans have killed more people than natural disasters. Europeans have killed more innocent people from all around the world than anything else and anyone else. And then they come and they call every single nation and every single resistance, lawful resistance from every single nation that has fought back against their tyranny, against their occupation, against their oppression, and against their invasion, and against their attempt to enslave these people, they call these resistant movements and lawful resistant people terrorists, barbarians. I mean, the native Indians were called barbarians. The same goes for the Aboriginals of Australia. And the same goes in South Africa, by the way, which I forgot to mention. And by the way, Israel killed 1 million Palestinians since 1947. 1 million Palestinians were killed by the European Zionists who came from Europe to occupy Palestine. And they made 7 million Palestinians refugees outside Palestine, and there are 7 million Palestinian refugees still living in Palestine today, 2.4 million of which live in Gaza. And by the way, all 2.4 million Palestinians living in Gaza are actually refugees who have been displaced from different parts of Palestine, during the Israeli genocidal war and occupation that has lasted for 76 years. And then they dare call the Hamas resistant movement, the lawful resistant movement, Hamas, terrorist. They have called every single resistant movement all around the world terrorists, rebellions, barbarians, fanatics, Islamists, extremists, just because they fought back against the tyranny and oppression of these colonizing countries, these Western colonizing countries who attempted to colonize their countries, invade their countries, occupy their countries, exploit their resources, enslave the nation of these countries. Every time we fight back against their tyranny and oppression, we are called terrorists, we are called fanatics, we are called Islamists, we are called barbarians, because we want to live the same way they live. We want to liberate our country. We want to liberate our families from the shackles of enslavement of the violent, aggressive occupier. It is shameful, really, because millions of Americans and Europeans, believe the crap that is told on Zionist media in America and Europe, and they continue to push their agenda and spread their lies, as if Muslims do not have the right to exist, as if other nations do not have the right to exist. Only Europeans have the right to exist. And this derives from their hateful, racist, discriminative mentality, which they have adopted from their Bible, by the way. If you read the Bible, you'll understand that this is not a book from God. It has enticed violence. It has enticed racism. It has encouraged these Zionist Europeans to continue to enslave other nations, to continue to belittle other nations of different races, different colors, different religions. Read the Bible, you'll understand this is the source of their evil, and it's not because it's from God. The Bible is not from God. The Bible is a man-made written book, written by the same exact people who are occupying nations, who are enslaving people, who are committing genocide and committing ethnic cleansing against people from different parts of the world, and not just Palestine. Please spread the video. Let people know the numbers. Let people understand. Let people gain perspective.
Okay, so across history and across the globe, European colonial powers, and I call them colonial powers deliberately, have committed a wide range of atrocities in various parts of the world and throughout history. These actions were often justified under the guise of civilizing missions or civilization of so and so, spreading Christianity, bringing progress, just to name a few, euphemistic language or linguistic terms they have used to justify their injustice, their atrocities against other people. So Africa has hugely or largely been affected by Europe's imperialism. And Africa is not the only, might be the biggest victim even to date, but it's not the only victim. Today, I want us to look into history, expose these injustices, and talk about this because these are some of the issues that we never get the opportunity to talk about, especially when we are trying to rely on mainstream media, which I have always termed as a proxy of the imperial West. Will never get to know the truth. So in this video, let's just dive in one after the other. Of course, we can never, exploit the list, but let's just talk about a few that stand out. Now, I want us to start with, or I'd rather wish to start with the transatlantic slave trade that really affected Africa to a very large extent. And of course, the culprits or countries that were involved in these primarily included Portugal, Spain, France, Britain, the Netherlands, amongst many others. And millions of Africans were forcibly taken from their homelands and transported to the Americas under brutal conditions. The inhumane treatment and that resulted in deaths of millions of Africans, and that was a catastrophe. Just to say the least. And then we have the Congo Free State. We know this, and the culprit here is King Leopold of Belgium, and this happened around the 1885 to early 1900s. And under King Leopold II, the Congo Free State became the site of mass exploitation, forced labor, and violence. Millions of Congolese, over 10 million Congolese died due to harsh labor conditions, starvation, disease, and outright, straight murder. The pursuit of rubber and other resources fueled these atrocities. And we know that today, as we talk, as I make this video, Congo is still under turmoil. And everything points out to exploitation of foreign powers. Congo is a very rich country, but Congo is bleeding. Today, as we talk, millions of Congolese people have been displaced, and everybody that is able is trying to exploit Congo's rich mineral resources left, right, and center. At some point, King Leopold even said that Congo wasn't a Belgium territory, but his personal property, And then we have another one, the third one. Let's talk about the Herero and the Namak genocide of 1904 to around 1908, 1909 in Namibia. And this atrocity was perpetuated by none other but the Germans. So in what is now the current Namibia, German colonial forces carried out a Herero in Namak extermination campaign, or rather against the African people that were, of course, the original people that were living in this land. So the genocide involved massacres and forced labor and forced relocation, especially, and concentration camps, resulting in the deaths of up to 80% of indigenous Herero population. And another one is that touches on France as the culprit was the Algerian War of Independence, 1954 to early 1960s. And France, as I have mentioned, was the culprit. So the French military used brutal tactics, including mass executions, torture, and the displacement of entire villages in an effort to suppress Algerian independence movements. The conflict led to widespread suffering and loss of life among African or among Algerians. This was during the struggle for independence. And then we have, in my country, Kenya, we had the Mau Mau uprising of the early 1950s to around the 1960s. And the country that was involved here was none other than the United Kingdom. So in response to the Mau Mau uprising, so Mau Mau was a defense movement against the imperialist. So in response to this Mau Mau rebellion in Kenya, when the Kenyans were rebelling, the British forces established detention camps where thousands of Kenyans were subjected to torture, forced labor, starvation, amongst many other injustices. So many died or were permanently scarred by this experience. And this wasn't just an Algerian or a Kenyan phenomenon. This phenomena of rebellion against the atrocities, the injustices of the imperialists, of the colonialists, cuts across so many territories, so many countries, and so many regions in Africa. And another one, we just outside Africa, we also had the it's called the Indian famine, under the British rule, and this was perpetuated by the United Kingdom. So British colonial policies, including the diversion of food resources and imposition of high taxes, exacerbated famines in India, notably in the it's called the Bengal region. The Bengal region, so that now gave birth to the Bengali famine of 1943, where millions of Bengali people or millions of Indian people were starved to death. Then another one, we have the Opium Wars and exploitation of China. All right, and the country was the culprits here were the United Kingdom and France, and to open so the atrocity here was to open Chinese markets to British opium, and the UK engaged in two wars. 1839 to 1842 and 1856 to 1860, leading to China's defeat and the imposition of unequal treaties. These treaties facilitated the economic exploitation of China and the widespread addiction to opium. And then we have most notably the Scramble for Africa, in the larger picture now. And countries that are involved was almost the entire Europe, Britain and France, the biggest culprits. We had Belgium in Congo, we have Germany, and we had Portugal. So here, the colonization and partition of Africa led to widespread exploitation, violence, and the disruption of indigenous societies of African people. So entire populations were subjugated, land was confiscated, and that is still very evident today, the confiscation of land from indigenous people, and resources were plundered, or I can still even say are still being plundered, leaving very, very long-lasting scars on the continent. And then we have the exploitation and violence in the Caribbean. And these had countries like Spain, countries like Britain and France, amongst others, Portugal, as the culprits. And European colonizers enslaved indigenous peoples and imported African slaves to work on plantations in the Caribbean. That's why today the Caribbeans have so many black people or so many people of African descent. So the brutal working conditions and the oppressive plantation system led to immense suffering and near extinction, total extinction of indigenous populations of the Caribbeans. So these examples just highlight the profound, the very, very deep and often devastating impact of European imperialism and colonization, on nations and other peoples. And the legacy of these actions continue to influence global relations and the social, the economic, and political conditions in many parts of the world today. Once again, I'd love to really emphasize that this is knowledge that we as Black people, we as the oppressed people, we as people that are not exactly the perpetrators of these atrocities must find out what happened, because if we rely on what the media is going to serve today, and I have called this media on purpose a proxy of the West, we'll never know the truth. And history has that habit of repeating itself. So if we know the problems that were there in history, we will be able to foresee when such tactics, such malicious tactics are being or are attempted on us. This video, I mean, comes in the backdrop of what is happening currently in the Middle East, in the Hamas Israeli war, and everybody that is always going against the West, that is always fighting for their rights against the West imperialists, are going to be termed as, extremists, as uncivilized, as terrorists. But you look at it keenly and you realize these are people that are fighting for their lives, fighting for their rights. Yeah, so that is that for this video, the little I wanted to share. Please do share your opinions, your comments in the in the comment section, and like this video, share this video, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel if you have not yet. So until next time, see you in the next video. Peace.